Ever wonder which steakhouse items you should never order and which you absolutely should? Picture this. You're staring down a menu under dim lights, your mouth watering, but one wrong choice could ruin the whole night. What if the dish you've been loyal to for years is actually the biggest mistake on the list? Let's kick things off with the king of the grill and the ultimate splurge, bone-in ribeye. You walk into a steakhouse, the air heavy with that mix of sizzling fat and wood smoke, and the menu hands you a choice. Play it safe with a small cut, or go all in with a bone-in ribeye. You choose the ribeye, and before long, it lands in front of you like a crown jewel, thick, glistening, and still crackling from the grill. This cut is beloved for one simple reason. It is marbling heaven. Those delicate white streaks of fat running through the meat are not just decoration. They melt into the beef during cooking, creating juicy, flavor-packed bites from edge to center. And the bone? That is not just for show either. It acts like a built-in flavor booster, holding heat and adding that deep, rich taste you simply do not get from boneless cuts. The ribeye is also forgiving to cook. Even if you like your steak a little more done, it stays tender and flavorful. But in a steakhouse setting, a properly cooked ribeye should be served medium rare, with a nice crust on the outside and a warm red center. What makes it even better is how it pairs with sides. A ribeye can handle bold flavors, from creamy spinach to garlicky mashed potatoes, without losing its own voice on the plate. Now, yes, it is a pricier option, often one of the highest on the menu. But if you are celebrating or just want to taste steak at its fullest potential, this is the pick. And here's the thing. Even when you finish the meat, the bone is a treat in itself. Some diners will shamelessly gnaw on it because that is where the deepest flavor hides. That might not be first date behavior, but it is a move steak lovers understand. At home, cooking a ribeye takes some attention. You want to let it rest after searing so the juices do not run all over your cutting board, and a quick baste with butter and herbs in the pan never hurts. Bottom line, bone-in ribeye is the steakhouse's statement piece, rich, indulgent, and unforgettable when done right. What is your take? Is the bone-in ribeye worth the splurge every single time? Sliding in next is the so-called delicacy that turns tender luxury into a dry disaster, the well-done filet. Filet mignon, at its best, is buttery soft, with a clean, mild flavor that makes it one of the most sought-after cuts on any steakhouse menu. But here is the problem. This cut is naturally lean. It has very little fat compared to something like a ribeye, which means it needs careful cooking to keep it juicy. When you order it well done, all that tenderness is roasted right out of it. The heat drives away the moisture, and you end up with something that still looks elegant on the plate, but feels like chewing on an expensive piece of leather. Some steakhouses will try to save a well-done filet by drowning it in sauce, wrapping it in bacon, or topping it with a compound butter. But even then, the magic of the cut is gone. It is not that you cannot enjoy steak well done, but the filet is just not built for it. It is like ordering a delicate souffle and then asking for it to be extra crispy. And here is the kicker. The filet is usually one of the most expensive steaks on the menu, so if you are paying top price for it, you should get it cooked in a way that plays to its strengths, not its weaknesses. Medium rare or medium at most is where the filet truly shines, with a tender bite and subtle flavor that needs no rescuing. Now, I get it. Some people have been eating steak well done for their entire lives, and genuinely prefer it that way. But if you are open to experimenting, the filet is the perfect cut to try at a lower doneness just once. You might be surprised by how much more flavor and juiciness you get. At home, if you are set on cooking a filet more thoroughly, you can try sous vide cooking to keep it moist, but it still will not match the magic of a properly seared medium rare. This is one of those steakhouse moments where the best advice is, if you want it well done, pick a different cut. Save the filet for when you are ready to taste it as it was meant to be. Be honest. Have you ever ordered a filet well done and regretted it halfway through the meal? Now, here is the cut that is practically made for sharing and bragging about later. Porterhouse for two. The porterhouse is the showstopper of the steakhouse menu, a single massive cut that gives you the best of two worlds. The tender filet mignon on one side of the bone and the flavorful New York strip on the other. It is big, bold, and often served sizzling hot, sometimes on a platter so heavy the server has to carry it with two hands. Ordering a porterhouse feels like a celebration in itself. It is a statement that says, yes, we came here to feast. Because it is meant for sharing, you also get a bit of dining theater out of it, with the server sometimes slicing and plating at tableside. The beauty of this cut is the variety in each bite. You can start with the buttery tenderness of the fillet side, then switch over to the strip for more chew and deeper flavor. And if you pace yourself, you will still have enough appetite to tackle some sides. Because this steak demands partners like creamy mashed potatoes, sautéed greens, or a pile of crispy onion rings. Price-wise, a porterhouse for two often costs less than ordering two separate steaks, which makes it not just delicious but also a better deal. At home, cooking a porterhouse is a bit of a challenge because the two sides cook at slightly different rates. But a good reverse sear technique can handle that beautifully. There is also something primal and satisfying about eating a steak with a bone running through the middle. It just feels substantial. In a steakhouse, it is a cut that will turn heads as it passes through the dining room. And that is part of the fun. You do not just eat a porterhouse, you experience it. It is the steak equivalent of a victory lap. Would you rather share a porterhouse with someone or try to conquer the whole thing on your own? Coming up is the rich, showy plate that forgets the star ingredient in a sea of dairy: lobster mac and cheese. On paper, this sounds like luxury on a fork. Tender chunks of lobster folded into creamy, cheesy pasta, served bubbling hot in its own little skillet. But here's the truth most steakhouses will not tell you. The lobster is often an afterthought. It gets lost in the richness of the cheese sauce. So instead of tasting sweet, buttery shellfish, you are mostly tasting, well, cheese. And not always the good kind. Some versions use a heavy hand with generic cheddar or cream sauces that coat everything in uniform goo, masking the delicate lobster flavor completely. On top of that, lobster is not cheap, so if a restaurant is cutting costs, guess what gets skimped on first? That is right, the lobster. You might end up with a few sad shreds of meat scattered through a mountain of pasta. Now, does that make it bad comfort food? Absolutely not. As a cheesy pasta dish, it can be hearty and satisfying. But if you are paying steakhouse prices for it, you probably want the lobster to play more than a cameo role. At home, you can fix this by using a lighter cheese sauce and adding the lobster at the last minute, so it stays tender and distinct. In the restaurant, unless you know they make it fresh and generously portion the lobster, you might want to skip it and put that money toward an actual seafood entree. Lobster deserves to be the star of the plate, not a guest in someone else's show. Have you ever ordered lobster mac and cheese and thought, wait, where's the lobster? Halfway through, we are diving into the decadent finale you will dream about for weeks: molten chocolate cake. The very sight of this dessert can make a table fall silent. A small, unassuming cake arrives, sometimes dusted with powdered sugar, sometimes wearing a crown of berries or a scoop of ice cream. But the magic is hidden inside. Break into it with your spoon, and out flows a river of warm, rich chocolate, mingling with the cool creaminess of whatever is on the side. It is indulgence in its purest form: sweet, bitter, velvety, and just the right amount of messy. At a steakhouse, molten chocolate cake feels like the grand finale to a big, celebratory meal. You have already gone all in with the appetizers, the steak, maybe even a glass or two of wine. This is the moment to lean back and savor something that says, yes, this night was worth remembering. But here is the catch. Not all molten chocolate cakes are created equal. Some are made fresh to order with that delicate balance between set edges and gooey center. Others, they are reheated from frozen, giving you a lukewarm filling that tastes like it has been sitting in the back freezer for months. And you can always tell the difference. A good one has depth of flavor from quality chocolate, maybe a hint of espresso or liqueur to round it out. A bad one is just sugar and cocoa powder pretending to be decadent. Price-wise, you will often see molten chocolate cake land in the $10 to $15 range at a steakhouse, which means if you are sharing, it is a relatively small splurge for the experience. At home, you can make a surprisingly great version with just a few ingredients and a hot oven, but timing is everything. 1 minute too long and the center sets completely. If you ever order this at a steakhouse, pair it with a scoop of vanilla ice cream or a dollop of whipped cream to balance the richness. This is not about subtlety, it is about ending the meal on a high note. And if you are someone who says, I do not like dessert, molten chocolate cake might just change your mind, or at least make you ask for one more bite from whoever ordered it. So tell me, would you order the molten chocolate cake for yourself? Or only if someone else at the table did first? On deck is the bargain platter that tastes like it took a wrong turn through the frozen section. Surf and turf special. The concept is irresistible on paper, the best of both land and sea, often a steak paired with lobster tail, shrimp, or scallops. It sounds like luxury, like you are getting the ultimate dining upgrade. But here's where reality can be cruel. When it is offered as a too good to be true special, you are probably not getting the freshest ingredients or the highest quality cuts. The steak might be a thin sirloin cooked without much care, and the seafood, often pre-cooked, frozen, and reheated until it is rubbery. That is the danger of the special. It is designed to look like value while quietly cutting corners. Instead of the rich, tender bite of a perfectly cooked filet alongside sweet, buttery lobster, you end up with a chewy steak and seafood that tastes more like the freezer than the ocean. Presentation often tries to make up for it. A lemon wedge here, a little parsley there, but no amount of garnish can hide mediocrity. Price-wise, these specials can range from $25 to $35, which at first seems like a deal. But when you realize you could have put that toward a great steak or a proper seafood entree, the math changes fast. At home, a surf and turf can be spectacular if you buy fresh and cook with care. A quick sear on the steak, a gentle broil for the lobster or shrimp, and you have a true luxury meal. In the steakhouse, if you see it listed as a special at a surprisingly low price, ask how it is prepared and whether the seafood is fresh. If the answer is vague, that is your cue to pivot. The combination of steak and seafood can be one of the best indulgences on the menu, but only when both halves are given the attention they deserve. Otherwise, you are just getting two disappointments on one plate. What is worse? Overcooked steak or overcooked seafood when you were expecting a perfect surf and turf? Shaking things up with a crisp, chilled classic that wakes up your taste buds. Shrimp cocktail with a kick. This is the appetizer that feels both timeless and refreshing. Picture a tall glass or chilled platter lined with perfectly cooked shrimp curled like little commas, served with a side of cocktail sauce that has just enough horseradish to make your eyes water in the best way. When done right, each shrimp is plump, firm, and sweet, with that snap you only get from perfectly fresh seafood. The cold serving temperature keeps it light and bright, making it the perfect lead-in to a heavy steakhouse meal. But as with all classics, execution is everything. Overcooked shrimp turn rubbery fast, and under-seasoned ones just taste flat. The cocktail sauce should have layers. Sweetness from the tomato base, tang from lemon juice, and that unmistakable horseradish burn that clears your sinuses. Some steakhouses will play with the formula, adding chili flakes, fresh herbs, or even a splash of hot sauce to give it extra personality. Price-wise, shrimp cocktail tends to run in the $10 to $15 range for a half dozen. But the quality difference between great and mediocre is worth every extra dollar. This is not just a nostalgia pick. It is a palate reset before the main course. At home, making your own cocktail sauce takes about 5 minutes and instantly beats anything from a jar. The key is to serve it ice cold and arrange it so it looks like an occasion, even if it is just a Tuesday night. Shrimp cocktail with a kick works because it is both simple and elegant, a dish that proves you do not have to be complicated to make an impression. And when that horseradish hits just right, you know the meal is off to a good start. Do you prefer your shrimp cocktail with just a hint of heat, or enough horseradish to make you tear up a little? Next is the carb mountain that leaves you too stuffed for the main event. Stuffed baked potato the size of your head. When it hits the table, it is a sight to behold. A massive russet potato split open, overflowing with sour cream, melted cheese, chopped bacon, scallions, maybe even broccoli if they are feeling virtuous. It is warm, inviting, and practically dares you to dig in. The problem is, this side dish is not really a side dish at all. It is a full meal in disguise. The sheer size alone means you are committing valuable stomach space before you have even touched your steak. And while all those toppings sound great, They are usually piled on in such heavy proportions that the potato itself gets lost in the mix. In the worst cases, the potato has been baked hours earlier and left to sit, so the inside is dry and crumbly rather than fluffy and moist. At that point, you are relying entirely on the toppings to save it, which turns the whole thing into a pile of lukewarm dairy and bacon grease. Price-wise, these behemoths can run anywhere from $7 to $12. Not outrageous, but still more than you should pay for what is essentially a giant starch bomb. At home, you can do it better by baking the potato fresh, seasoning the skin with oil and salt so it is crisp, and keeping the toppings in balance so every bite has both potato and flavor. In a steakhouse, it can be tempting to add one to your order because it feels traditional, but if you really want to enjoy your steak, you are better off with a smaller, more balanced side. The stuffed baked potato is the friend who means well, but ends up hogging all the attention at the party. It looks impressive, it photographs well, but in practice, it steals focus from what you actually came to eat. Have you ever filled up on a side dish and regretted it when your main course arrived? For a side that somehow makes spinach taste like pure indulgence, we have got creamed spinach. This is the quiet champion of the steakhouse menu, the one that sits humbly next to the big flashy steaks and overloaded potatoes, quietly adding richness and balance to the plate. Oh. At its best, creamed spinach is velvety, savory, and layered with flavor from garlic, onions, cream, and a hint of nutmeg. The greens themselves still have a bit of texture, so you know you are eating spinach, but they are bathed in a sauce so decadent it almost feels wrong to call it a vegetable. The magic of this dish is that it works like a palate buffer, cutting through the fattiness of the steak while also holding its own as a comfort food. But when it goes wrong, it goes very wrong. Overcooked spinach turns into a limp, watery mess that dilutes the cream sauce, and bland seasoning makes the whole thing taste like hot milk with a green tint. Some places skimp on quality by using frozen spinach without draining it properly, which can ruin the texture completely. Price-wise, creamed spinach usually runs about $8 to $12 for a small bowl, which is a fair trade if it is done right. At home, it is surprisingly easy to make. The trick is to cook the spinach just until wilted, then combine it with a well-seasoned bechamel or cream base so it stays rich without becoming soupy. In the steakhouse, it pairs beautifully with almost any cut of beef, and even works well as a topping for a baked potato if you are feeling adventurous. This is one of those rare sides that delivers both nostalgia and a sense of occasion. It is proof that vegetables do not have to be boring to be memorable. Do you think creamed spinach counts as a vegetable serving? Or is it basically just a sauce pretending to be healthy? And finally, the filler basket that quietly steals your appetite before the good stuff shows up. Table bread. That's just bread. You know the drill. You sit down, glance at the menu, and within minutes, a basket appears. Maybe it is warm, maybe it is not. But either way, it is plain bread. No garlic butter, no seasoning, no olive oil for dipping. Just slices or rolls that feel like they came straight from the grocery store bakery section. Now, there is nothing inherently wrong with bread. Fresh, crusty bread served with a little salted butter can be a thing of beauty. But in a steakhouse, it is a trap. You start eating it because you are hungry and waiting for your meal, and before you know it, you have filled up on empty carbs before the first course has even arrived. Worse yet, in some places, the bread is not fresh at all, and you can taste that it has been sitting out too long. It is meant to be a gesture of hospitality, but when it is bland and forgettable, it is just taking up space on the table and in your stomach. Price-wise, bread is usually free, but in reality, you are paying for it in appetite real estate. At home, if you want to serve bread before a meal, elevate it. Toast it, brush it with olive oil, sprinkle on herbs, or serve it alongside a dip so it becomes an intentional part of the experience. In a restaurant, it is perfectly fine to pass on the bread basket entirely, especially if you know a rich steak and sides are on the way. Bread should be a supporting act, not the main event before the main event. Have you ever regretted saying yes to the bread basket before your meal even arrived? So, from bone and ribeye glory to the sad trap of bread that's just bread, tell me your personal steakhouse must-orders and never-orders down in the comments. And if you enjoyed this feast, give it a like, hit subscribe, and join the hidden menu for the next round at the table. And remember, the truth is not always on the menu.